We can't use words to get to the source of it. But what we can do is feel around the edges of it, to talk about what it's not, talk about some of the effects it may have, but this distance from language to the meditation is really one step removed from it. So keep that in mind as we go through this talk about meditation, that whatever is said isn't quite it, but it may be things that are affected by it, but it's not quite the raw experience of it. So as we begin the talk, we might as well take a couple minutes just to arrive and get a little taste of what it is to be present and to arrive into this, just a small practice of meditation. So I invite you just to simply notice what's happening in your body in this moment. What are those sensations that catch your attention? Maybe your breath. Maybe sensations and feeling elsewhere in the body. And also, what are you hearing around you? What are those sounds? The colors and shapes through your eyes, whether they're open or closed. What is it like to be you in this moment? Alert, yet very receptive. With all your perceptions open to simply notice what's arising without any expectations or any pressure. Not seeking anything magical to happen, but just simply dropping in to the moment as it is right now. Not what it will be like or what it has been like, but what's here in this very moment. What is it like not to be in the mind, trying to figure everything out, full of expectations, but just to drop into the senses of the body, of your listening, of your seeing in this very moment. So invite a breath in and release with your breath out. So a little taste, perhaps, of what can't be described but can be experienced as we continue on with our talk. So the question is, why would someone want to practice this meditation? This taking time to just stop and to simply become aware, to embrace a bit of stillness or a bit of solitude. So one big thing I notice with myself is there's so many simple beauties of life that really slip through my fingers because I'm not really there. Whether it be playing with my daughters or being out in nature, where quite often I'm playing with them, or say going for a walk in the woods, and I'm somewhere else with my mind. I'm in tomorrow, or I'm in a hypothesized worry a week from now. And I'm not actually taking in what's around me, the sounds of the birds, the light of the sun coming through the trees. Sometimes even what my daughters are saying to me, I don't even hear because I'm kind of somewhere else. But I do notice when I take this time to arrive and to practice this skill of being present, I'm a little more capable in those moments to actually take in what's happening, to take in the people around me, to take in the environment around me, and to let it be noticed and let it affect me instead of being off somewhere else. Again, why would someone want to practice? I also notice that often my mind, it feels like it is these hands with the strings on a marionette, and I'm lost and a bit helpless of the control of my mind. Where my mind begins to call the shots and says, it's time for fear, it's time for worry. And I get swept up in these patterns and in these waters. Even though really that fear and that worry, there's really no proof of it, no need for it. Where I am very safe, but yet the mind really takes control and plays with those strings, often making things much bigger or grander than they are, or also sometimes dismissing things and making them a lot smaller and pulling me away from how things are, pulling me away from clearly seeing what's happening. So there's 3 pillars to a meditation practice that across really all the different disciplines of meditation, all the different flavors, all the different styles of them, these 3 really ring true. Like a thread on a needle, they weave through all the different lineages and different styles. And these 3 pillars are stillness, solitude, and silence. Stillness could mean simply just allowing the body to pause and to stop for a moment and sit down or lie down or stand. But taking ourselves as best we can away from this constant motion of movement and arriving into this stillness. And of course, this stillness is very hard to attain full stillness, but we can get close to it. Of course, there's always some movement of the breath. There's always some movement of the mind, of the heart beating. But we begin to still. And then there's solitude. Taking time to just be with ourselves. to put all of those connections we have and the influences in our life, the constant information coming in from others, coming in from our screens in our life, and taking time simply just to be with ourselves. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to find a cave up in some mountainside to find solitude, but simply maybe just sitting by yourself in a room or in nature and being alone. And the third is silence. Allowing yourself that permission to not have everything figured out and to not have all the information, and allow for that quiet. To turn the volume down on the noise, often the bombardment of opinions, suggestions, how you should be, and just allow yourself to drop into that space of silence. So with these three pillars, there's also balances, these contradictions, these opposing qualities of meditation that really come together and harmonize into one another. So one of these balances would be the balance of being very alert with a clarity of perception, balanced with an acceptance, an openness, and a receptivity. Another one of these delicate balances is staying very engaged and awake, so the meditation doesn't become a time to check out and to go numb or to fall asleep, but also balancing that engagement and that awakeness with consent and surrender. Allowing the moment to be as it is without needing to change it. Consenting to whatever is there, whatever arises, yet staying engaged and awake to those surrenderings in that consent. There's also another balance of embracing the wonder and the awe of the moment, of being a human, of being able to see and being able to hear and being able to feel those wonderful gifts that we're given. And also balancing that wonder and awe with the realization that it's also nothing special that's happening. To not diminish the moment, diminish the wonder and the awe, and also not to inflate the moment in making something much more special than what it is. So taking our three pillars of stillness and solitude and silence, and our three balances, this alertness, clarity of perception, balance with receptiveness and acceptance, the balance of being engaged and awake with consenting and surrendering, and this balance of wonder and awe with nothing special. So how do we do it? do we practice this? Well, the main way we practice this is to practice, is to sit in stillness, is to sit in solitude, to sit in silence, and play with these balances. Often with practices like these, we can trick ourselves into thinking that we're doing them by reading about them or talking about them. But really, that's not the practice. It'd be like reading all the books, listening to all the talks, looking at all the data of sex, but not experiencing sex. They're two very different things. Same thing with reading and talking and looking at the scientific journals about meditation. It's not meditation. That's not the experience of meditation. So how do we do it? We practice. We sit down, maybe set a timer. We embrace some stillness in the body. We invite in the solitude and the silence. We play with being engaged and also surrendering in the moment, of simply just watching and taking in the sounds around us, sensations of the body, watching when meditation tries to turn into an exercise of thinking or figuring things out, and shifting your way back to just simply experiencing the moment. So the practice of meditation really begins before we sit down. And I've talked to many, many people, myself included, where we set out this goal or this ambition to meditate or to learn how to. Maybe it's setting a goal of sitting down for 15 minutes a day or something like that. And of these many, many people, again, myself included, who've set out to do this, often the practice lasts for maybe a few days, for some a week or two, and then it falls off. And really, the practice begins before you sit down. The practice begins when the 1,001 excuses, the resistance to doing the practice starts to arise. The mind and the body can get very sneaky and very subtle on how to pull you away from the practice, on how to convince you not to. And everyone has their unique theme and flavor of resistance. And that really is for you to look at and to figure out and to be able to see clearly. Because with this meditation, the very thing that we're learning to sit with and inviting to, let's call it, operate in a different way, this mind of ours, these reactions of the body, are the very thing telling you not to do it. So working with this resistance, one way is to cut down your ambition. Make your practice a bite-sized chunk. So if your initial ambition for the practice, say, is to do, I want to sit down for 15 minutes every day in this quiet, in this solitude, and do my meditation. Maybe cut it down to 10 or to 5. and practice and get the skill developed of showing up, of being able to string the practice from one day to the next and the next day to the next. So there's a consistency. Because with this consistency of practice, the showing up daily, there's a lot to learn in that about resistance, about how the mind quite often lies to us, about how our feelings towards the practice aren't necessarily true in that moment. And this practice of meditation is a compounding quality where when we can start to string the days together and show up consistently one day to the next, what we got to taste and the learnings we took from, say, day number 2, they're still in us as we sit for day number 3. So the practice begins to build on itself from one day to the next. We're not starting over once every week or once a month and trying to pick the practice and give it life and birth it again. But there's a momentum that begins to carry if we can embrace this consistency. So inviting the practice to be a bite-sized chunk can be quite helpful with working with this resistance, where the mind comes up and says, not today, it's not worth it, it's not working. Or when the feelings of the body arise and go, I don't feel like doing it today, I'm a little bit tired. There's something more exciting going on. And we can start to clearly see this resistance and create a little distance from it. So the resistance isn't the one holding the reins, but we can distance ourselves from it and clearly see it when it shows up. So it's not the one running the show anymore. There's also an idea called the minimum effective dose. So of course, life happens, and there will be days where the practice might not be attainable. So the minimum dose is, what is the smallest dose that you could do to just touch back in to the essence of the practice, so we don't lose that continuation of the practice, so we don't have to start anew again. So for an example, if your meditation was 15 minutes a day, and that's what you're striving for, perhaps the minimum effective dose will be to sit down for 2 minutes and just touch back in to that flavor of meditation, so it's not forgotten, so it's not left out of your body. And with starting, especially if it's starting anew, any practice, and of course meditation included, there is a kindness and a compassion and a patience that has to come with it, where there needs to be some compassion and patience with yourself on a day that you miss, or on a day where maybe you just sit for 2 minutes, and that's okay. That's part of the practice as well. When the practice does drop off and you have to pick it up again and start anew, again, this kindness and this patience with ourselves. So, a poem for you all to close. And this is from a book called The Experience of Insight by Joseph Goldstein. And this is a poem within it, written by a Zen nun who is nameless. And take a moment to just touch in the embodiment that this Zen nun is writing these words from. Someone who perhaps has dedicated their whole life to the practice of meditation, who perhaps sits for many, many hours a day, who lives quite a simple life. So here's the poem by this Zen nun. 66 times have these eyes beheld the changing scenes of autumn. I have said enough about moonlight. Ask me no more. Only listen to the voice of pines and cedars when no wind stirs. Only listen to the voice of pines and cedars when no wind stirs. So to hear the sounds of the trees when no wind stirs, this is that masterful balance of being engaged and surrendering, that clarity of perception, that receptivity and that acceptance. Also that wonder and that awe and nothing special. So I wish you all well on your journey of meditation, and enjoy.